The wind clawed through the canyon like a wounded spirit, carrying the sound of hooves, broken brush, and a whisper that would change a lonely man's life forever. Eli Mercer, the reclusive rancher whom folks in Tres Rios called the Ghost of Dry Creek, hadn't planned on stopping that night. He only wanted to get home before the cold set its teeth in. But fate had a habit of walking into a man's path when he least expected it. As he rode along the ridge overlooking the valley, something caught his eye, a flicker of movement, the slightest shift in the dying light. Eli reined in his horse, squinting. Down in the low brush, a figure lay curled like a wounded fawn. Instinct told him to keep riding. Solitude was safer. People brought trouble, expectations, heartbreak. He had spent years building a life where nobody needed him and he needed nobody. But the figure moved again. Against his better judgment, he rode down the slope. What he found was a young Apache woman, her dark braids tangled with dust, her body trembling violently beneath a thin woven blanket. She must have been barely 20, her breath shallow and desperate. When she raised her head, her eyes, large, glassy, full of fear and pain, locked onto his. "Please," her voice shook like a leaf in winter. "I need," a man's warmth. The words were not spoken with seduction. They were spoken with fear of death. With the rawness of a soul trying to hold on to life. The night was dropping fast, and the cold desert could kill quicker than any bullet. Eli saw it. She was freezing, close to slipping away. He swung off his horse immediately, dropping to his knees beside her. "You're gonna be all right," he murmured, more to reassure himself than her. "Can you stand?" She tried. Collapsed. Eli wrapped his coat around her shoulders and lifted her into his arms. She was light, too light, and burning with fever despite shivering uncontrollably. He placed her on the horse, mounted behind her, and started toward his ranch as the sun dipped behind the canyon walls. When they arrived, he carried her inside and laid her near the fire. She stared at him with both gratitude and fear, as though unsure whether she'd found safety or traded one danger for another. "My name's Eli," he said gently as he prepared warm water and blankets. "What's yours?" "Nasha," she whispered. "Daughter of the White Stone people." He brought her hot tea, rubbed warmth into her arms, and kept the fire high. At first, she remained quiet, guarded. But as hours passed and fever loosened its grip, her eyes softened. She told him she'd been separated from her family when a band of outlaws raided their camp, scattering her people. She had run for days with nothing but determination in the blanket on her shoulders. "I didn't think I would survive," she said softly, staring at the flames. "When I saw you on the ridge, I thought a spirit had come to carry me away." Eli didn't smile. Instead, he looked away, letting the fire hide the ache inside his chest. "You picked the wrong man for a spirit," he muttered. Nasha tilted her head. "Why do you say that?" "Because I got no business saving anybody." He paused, swallowed. "Failed too many times." She studied him for a long moment. "A man who rescues strangers in the desert is not a man of failure." He didn't answer. Over the next days, as Nasha healed, the ranch grew warmer in ways Eli didn't expect. Her presence softened the silence that had once suffocated the walls. She hummed ancient songs while sweeping the porch. She talked to the horses as if they understood every word. She asked Eli questions he hadn't heard in years, simple ones, like why he chose this life, why he kept living so far from town, why he never smiled. He would try to brush her off, but she had a gentle persistence he found impossible to ignore. One morning, while she helped mend a broken fence, she asked quietly, "Who did you lose?" Eli froze mid-hammer. The question hit him like a spur in the ribs. "My wife," he finally said, voice low. 6 years ago. Fever took her. I couldn't do a damn thing." Nasha laid her hand lightly on the wood. "No man controls the sickness of the world." "Maybe not," he said. "But I swore I wouldn't let myself care again. Hurts too much when life takes things away." Nasha looked at him, eyes deep with a grief of her own. "When my people were attacked, I lost sisters, cousins, everything familiar. But if I close my heart now, I will lose myself too." Her words struck something in Eli, an understanding, a truth he'd buried so deep he forgot it was there. Their days settled into a gentle rhythm, working, talking, sharing quiet moments by the fire. But peace in the West never lasted long. One afternoon, as Eli and Nasha led the horses to water, dust rose on the horizon. Riders, armed, fast, and coming straight toward the ranch. Eli recognized the mark on their coats, the same outlaws who'd attacked her camp. Nasha stiffened. It's them. Inside, Eli commanded, his voice sharp. But she shook her head. They won't stop. Not until they finish what they started. The riders circled the ranch like wolves. Their leader, a scar-faced brute named Riker, called out, "Evenin, Mercer. We're looking for a runaway Apache girl. Heard you picked yourself a new houseguest." Eli stepped onto the porch, shotgun leveled. "You ain't welcome on my land." Riker smirked. "We'll take the girl and go." "You won't take anybody," Eli said. The tension snapped like a dry branch. Gunfire erupted. Eli pushed Nasha behind him as bullets shattered wood and kicked up dust. For a moment, the ranch felt too small, too fragile against the violence of the world. But Nasha refused to run. She loaded rifles, dragged ammunition beside him, kept his courage alive with the steady strength in her eyes. "You fight for me," she said, voice steady. "And I fight for you." Together, they held their ground. Eli's aim was deadly. Nasha's instincts were sharp. The outlaws fell back, wounded pride turning into desperation. Riker charged, gun raised, only to be thrown from his horse by Nasha's quick shot, a warning rather than a kill. When the dust settled, the outlaws fled into the hills, leaving Eli and Nasha standing breathless in the quiet aftermath. Eli lowered his rifle. "You saved my life. And you saved mine," she replied. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, not with fear, not with desperation, but with the warmth of people who'd finally found a place where their broken pieces fit. That night, as the fire crackled softly, Nasha sat beside him, closer than she ever had before. "I asked for a man's warmth when I thought the cold was going to steal my life," she whispered. "But now, I think I was asking for something else, something I didn't know how to name." Eli swallowed, his voice rough. "And what's that?" "A reason to live," she said. "A reason to hope again." Eli stared into the flames, remembering the vow he'd made after his wife died, that he'd never open his heart again. But then he looked at Nasha, fragile yet fierce, wounded yet unbroken, and something inside him shifted. Maybe he hadn't been living all these years. Maybe he'd simply been surviving. He reached out, gently taking her hand. She didn't pull away. "You got a place here," he said softly. "If you want it." Nasha leaned her head against his shoulder, a quiet, peaceful breath escaping her lips. "I do," she whispered. And for the first time in 6 long years, Eli Mercer felt the cold of the world loosen its grip. Not because he had rescued her, but because they had rescued each other, two souls who had lost everything, finding warmth again in the most unexpected place. In the lonely heart of the Wild West, where the wind howled and life tested every spirit, a rancher and an Apache girl proved a simple truth. Sometimes warmth isn't just a fire in the hearth. Sometimes it's the courage to let someone in.